and you're prepared to forego 5 minutes of lunch, then we may be able to come to some 1 or 2 questions and to give Mr. Sasikawa a chance to speak. Natalia, it's well your turn.
I wanted to say that it's a real pleasure to be on this very multinational panel and to hear everyone's experience and also to hear everyone's frustrations. We heard a lot about physical disabilities, but I'm here really to talk about I think even graver issue, which is issues of people living with mental disabilities. And I don't want to listen to my own voice. Naked Heart Foundation was established 11 years ago by myself, and our main goal is to provide vital support to families raising children with special needs. Why is this important, especially in my country? Is because still thousands and tens of thousands of children are housed in institutions in Russia. And when we were addressing this issue way back, we realized that the only way to make a difference is to support a family. I was very lucky to be born to a very strong mother. So when my sister Oksana was born when I was 6 years old, she was born with severe mental disabilities. My mother was very much encouraged to give Oksana up into one of those institutions, but my mother, very rightly so, decided to keep Oksana. And it wasn't without consequences, personal consequences. And I know we heard a lot about today from the first panel as well, the main panel, about what that brings, what disability can bring with it. And I experienced it firsthand. It was indeed very difficult childhood for me, and maybe even less so Oksana, surprisingly, because Oksana, being very severely autistic, didn't really know the trouble we were living. She was a happy child. She was, in fact, the light of our lives. Me and my mother were raising Oksana alone. And I can actually say that I raised Oksana too, because my mother had to work permanently and in 4 different jobs, because she couldn't have a permanent job, so she had to take 4 little jobs, very difficult, very physical jobs, in order to support Oksana and myself alone. So from age 6, in fact, I learned how to wash, how to clean, how to cook, and very much looking after Oksana while my mother was at work, at the same time studying. And it's affected all of our lives. However, I cannot say I was an unhappy child. It was a very difficult childhood, sometimes to extreme, where we had nothing to eat at home and I would have to go to a friend in order to have a dinner. And so when I established Naked Heart Foundation 11 years ago, I established it for children of all abilities. I wanted to build an example of inclusive place for children to come and to be all together. So Naked Heart Foundation started building play parks throughout Russia. And play parks that had access for also children with disabilities, and that was something different. We were the first, we built the first inclusive play parks in Russia. I'm very proud of this. In fact, I'm very proud of a lot of Naked Heart Foundation's achievements. 3 years ago, we started a program, an educational program that runs in 7 different schools. It's very small compared to the size of Russia, the number of people, of children with disabilities who do not have access to education. But we were first to bring education to children with very, very severe autism. And not to do it on one child at the time, but actually to do it in 7 schools. We reformed 38 classes. We trained around 100 specialists. And today, it's an incredible platform. It's an incredible platform that can be scaled. And we're working now very closely with the Ministry of Education in order to do this. And they recognize our input as a very important input in order to really change the situation for children with disabilities in Russia. But what I didn't and never expected when I started Naked Heart Foundation, that it would bring such an incredible change into my own life and to life of my family. I always viewed Oksana as someone who's happy, who has a family, and vis-à-vis all the children out there who do not, and people who are housed in institutions, she was living in a great situations. But when Naked Heart Foundation when we opened our family support center 5 years ago in my hometown, Nizhny Novgorod, and that opened doors to children and to young adults with mental disabilities, it's really changed my family's life. Oksana, from being indeed loved and indeed supported, found herself living as close to a normal life as possible, thanks to Naked Heart Foundation and thanks to our work. She found a place where she could go daily, meet friends. Suddenly, for her, we saw changes in her that are sort of so normal to other young women, but for us it was a shock. Oksana suddenly wanted to choose her own clothes, what she's wearing. What she started to want to look pretty, and today Oksana cannot imagine her life without going to this center and without her friends. Something that we all take for granted, and something that is so important to be able to bring to as many people as possible, and especially, which is difficult, to bring it to people with mental disabilities, because they are indeed unless you are a family member, unless you're a specialist working with these children, especially in a country like Russia that's still going through severe changes, difficult changes, it's hard to understand what these people are capable of. Even sometimes, for me, it's a question mark. Even if I have a long experience and personal experience, but seeing sudden change in Oksana's behavior and discovering something more important for her was even a surprise for me. And when we do our work, and when I travel, when I meet other young people with disabilities, and when I discover young men who completely look like Oksana in terms of, very evidently locked in this body. They dribble, they cannot speak. But suddenly, this boy Alyosha, age 13, the specialist discovered that his brain is totally safe inside this body. I mean, Mr. Hawking is a great example to that, of course, but this happened to him at the later stage, so we all know that his brain is safe, and he talked about bringing technology in order to empower people who cannot speak but who have a brain. But when Alyosha started to point with great difficulty at letters on this kind of alphabet board in order to make sentences, and when I realized that Alyosha is speaking to me, and when we're having a conversation where he tells me I want to be a journalist, I felt so scared. I'm so scared to maybe not know what's going on in Oksana's head enough, but also a little bit helpless, because I know that Alyosha, for him to become a journalist, a recognized journalist in a country like Russia, it's a real challenge. And so as a sister and as someone whose heart is in this issue very profoundly, I do everything I can in my own country in order to change the situation. And as Andrew mentioned, and as I mentioned before and briefly, is that the power of social media, the power of being able for all of us to have the voice and to speak today, to join forces, it's something that we really need to pay attention to. When we have great cases. Actually, something happened earlier this year. My sister Oksana was thrown out of cafe because the owner said, your appearance scares my customers. And because Oksana was my sister, it brought attention of the whole nation. For 3 days, this was the news number one throughout the country. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was outraged. At the same time, people were saying, well, if it wasn't Natalia's sister, then no one would talk about it. And indeed, we know at Naked Heart Foundation that this is happening every single day. This stigma that we have to live with, also as an organization, because we are working with mental disabilities. This is not cancer. This is not curable. This is not something that is easily solved. It's not, well, easily or not easily, but it's not something that you can solve and cure and then move on with your life. This is something we have to help and support these people throughout their lives. And indeed, there comes great challenges with that. And that's why I mentioned that earlier, that it's quite difficult to convert the way of thinking of people today. But what we believe in at Naked Heart Foundation, that we shouldn't focus on what we cannot do and on the people who are opposing us, but we should focus on those who are with us. And today, with social media, we have great opportunity to all be contributors. And Naked Heart Foundation focuses a lot on, around communication, around bringing, through social media, bringing voices together, bringing numbers together. We, for example, recently have launched, actually following my sister's terrible situation, we launched a song with this is something Maria was mentioning earlier, how powerful can a song of a very famous artist be. And so with this very famous artist who won Eurovision, his name is Dima Bilan, we told the story in a music video about a mother raising a child with special needs, and who so doesn't believe anymore that a man, once they find out about the fact that she's raising a child with special needs, will still feel the same about her, that she's hiding this fact from this, what we see as a wonderful young man. And the story, of course, ends beautifully. It's a little bit of a Cinderella with purpose. This music video and this song was so beautiful, was so moving, that millions of people watched it in Russia. Millions of people watched it. And it also, we created a hashtag called Don't Be Silent. You can actually all go and look it up and see. We created a viral dance and a hashtag called Don't Be Silent, which brought voices of all these mothers who said, this is me. For the first time, we see a child with special needs on Channel 1, on the national television, one of the most famous singers in the country is singing about our issue. Am I dreaming? Is this really happening? And to hear these voices, to hear tens of thousands of voices like this, is something that is a really great power and an instrument that then we as an organization can take high, and we can say, you see, this matters, there's many of us, and also to give an opportunity to other people who this situation moved emotionally, or who understand the importance of inclusivity. It gives them opportunity to say, I support this, I want to know more, I want to include people with special needs in my everyday life. And this is also very, very important. Today, just lastly, Andrew, I know that the time is very short. Very lastly, today we can all take action, and I believe greatly in the power of little actions that can make big changes. Today on a platform and an app called LB that is everyone can download, on this very special day we can all take action and support great organizations working around the world to address issues of people with special needs, and we can all make a small contribution, not even financial, but just with a word of support, or a selfie, or a picture. We call it digital volunteering, and LB is the first platform that allows you to do so, and I'm a co-founder of this platform, so I invite you all to participate. It's spelled ELBI as LB, and stands for Little Actions, Big Difference. Thank you very much.
In summary, I must just say that that was a very moving contribution from Natalia. It brought to mind for me two things which came out of the New Delhi conference, which Dr. Banerjee initiated and organized. The first is that the disability community is about the disabled, so-called, and other people who are so-called abled who are helping. The community is a family where people work together. And the second thing is